A lot of people voted the way they did in November because of what was happening at the border. A lot of people said we were sick and tired of it. People were flowing across, getting all sorts of services and getting all sorts of support from taxpayers that we never asked to have this happen. So Donald Trump came in and he said, I'm going to close the border. And he did. One of the people that's in charge of making sure that happens, and she's doing it very well, is Tricia McLaughlin. She's the DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs. Tricia, how are you? Nice to see you.
Joe, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Really nice to meet you when I was in Washington a couple of weeks ago, and I grabbed you by the ear and I said, hey, please come on the show, and you said that you would, and you, of course, are a woman of your word. Thank you for taking the time.
And here we are. Thanks, Joe.
So I saw you talking with somebody. I don't even know the doofus's name. He was on ABC. And the guy was going on and on and on. And this is the way the reporters do this now. They lean sideways or something, and they act like they're in charge and they're the Lord of you or something. And Tricia, how do you explain this? And how do you explain that? And your response to him was succinctly to answer the question. And then you said, I think his name was John, maybe not. John, I can do this all day. So you're a fighter. I mean, President Trump seems to surround himself with a bunch of fighters, and you're just not going to take it. I think for a long time, Republicans and those of us on the right rolled over and just said, yeah, let's all just get along. Whereas you seem to roll up your sleeves and want to fight about it. Where does that come from?
Joe, you're completely right. This administration is dumb apologizing for following the rule of law and following the facts. And I think that's what makes it so much easier to fight, is because we do have the facts on our side. We have the will of the American people on our side. As you were just mentioning, on November 5th, 2024, the American people mandated that Donald J. Trump execute on securing our homeland and closing our border. That's exactly what Secretary Noem and President Trump have done, really within, I would say, 30 to 60 days. Border crossings were down 95%. And Democrats continue to say, oh, we need new laws on the books. This is an intractable problem. But that wasn't it. We just need a new president.
Yeah, and we got one, and thank God that he brings on people like you and like Secretary Noem. So let me ask you, when Mayorkas sat in front of those House and Senate committees, and he said the border is secure, and he said we're doing the work, and he said we're getting it done, there is no problem at the border. Tricia, was he lying or was he completely incompetent? Do we know?
Joe, I think it's a mix of both, but how can you possibly, swear an oath to the Constitution and then say the border is secure as there's 15,000 individuals coming into this country? It's disturbing. Well, we found even more than that, Joe. Actually, right when we came into this administration, we started looking at the numbers of arrests under the past administration. We were thinking, this doesn't look quite right. What we came to find is the past administration, they were counting as arrests people that they were actually letting into the interior of our country. So not only were they making the country less safe by letting in members of MS-13, Tren de Aragua, known terrorists, convicted rapists, convicted murderers, but they were lying to the American people about it by saying that these people were arrested when in fact they were probably detained for about 7 minutes on average and then let into American communities. It's pretty staggering, Joe. It's pretty stunning to see what happened to this country in just 4 years.
DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs is Tricia McLaughlin. We appreciate the time and the access. So in other words, they were saying we have 15,000 apprehensions, and the American people would say, oh, God, I'm so glad you caught them. You got the bad guys. But you're saying it was catch and release. So, yes, we apprehended them. Then we let them go. We'll see them in court in 7 years.
Exactly, Joe. And part of this, right, was a political play because the optics for Democrats were so bad that the border was being overwhelmed. They couldn't have Secretary Mayorkas sit in front of Congress and say the border is secure while there's these images of the border being overrun.
Right.
And so instead, what they did was send these people to CBP processing centers, quickly process them, and then instead of actually arresting them and turning them around, they just let them into the interior of our country.
It's Tricia McLaughlin. So they perverted the asylum system and the parole system so badly. Can you explain easily, I'm a simple guy, simple to understand, what parole was supposed to be? I thought it was about, I need to come in and see my sister get married, or I need to come in because there's a funeral in the United States, and I need a very temporary ability to stay here, then get out again. It seems as though they made it about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people getting parole. Was it intended to do that?
Joe, exactly to your point, it was a completely exploited process of these programs. These were good faith programs like temporary protected status, which was meant for individuals who are facing harm in their own country, very
Right.
much extraordinary circumstances, potentially a natural disaster. It's called temporary protected status for a reason. It was supposed to be temporary. But a lot of these individuals were in this country for decades, if not a quarter of a century. And then the Biden administration further exploited and corrupted this program by allowing 500,000 individuals in the last 4 years alone to use this program,
Wow.
really without any vetting, Joe, which is a huge problem. We know that some of the worst, including known terrorists, were led into this country under this exploited program. And we were thrilled to get a Supreme Court ruling 8-1 yesterday that said that we could revoke the temporary protected status of Venezuelans, many of which were members of Tren de Aragua. So that is a win for not just the Trump administration, but for the safety of the American people.
You know what blows my mind, though, and I think a lot of people watching and listening will agree with this, is that you have to go and beg the court to allow you to stop a status that's literally called temporary. I mean, temporary has a meaning in my mind. So the fact that you've got to go take all of these to the Supreme Court, this is them in the lower courts, this is them on the left, this is them in the Democrat Party trying to slow things down, right? They're just doing all they can to keep these bad guys here. Why is that, do you think?
Joe, I think you're completely right. A lot of people, and we often talk about how Biden broke the border, but we rarely talk about how Biden also broke the legal immigration system, the lack of vetting, the tons of people who would come into this country, and we didn't really know who they were. And now it's left for the Trump administration to pick up the pieces and fix this immigration system and actually really put integrity back into our legal immigration system. And that means fixing the border, but it also means fixing these parole processes, these temporary protected status, and all these other programs that were meant and designed by Congress in good faith and just have been completely corrupted, Joe.
It's Tricia McLaughlin. We appreciate you taking the time. I grew up in South Florida. We had refugees all the time from Haiti, from Cuba. We had people looking for asylum. And I remember the Mariel boat lift in 1980. They would have a bunch of people come from Cuba. Turned out Castro emptied out his jail, sort of like what Maduro's doing now. And we were smart enough to have the Chrome Detention Center. We didn't know who they were. We weren't going to let them out in society. For some reason, the Biden administration let everybody and anybody in. But when it comes to asylum, I always thought it meant internationally. You leave the place that is where you're facing harm, persecution, prosecution, war, whatever, and you stop in the first country that's free. Well, Mexico's free last time I checked. Why is it that people from around the globe, especially during the Biden administration, thought they had some right to just come straight to the United States? They could pass through 7 free countries, not stop there, not ask for asylum, and they get free passage here. What was that all about, do you think?
Well, when you have every Democrat primary candidate up on stage raising their hand that they're going to give free health care, free cell phones,
Right.
free luxury hotels to illegal immigrants, you're incentivizing people to come into this country illegally. That's exactly, I think, why this happened and why it's so essential that we end those incentives. Secretary Noem has been very clear that she believes we should codify Remain in Mexico. I think it's a great idea. I think it helps us stop these incentives. And, we're relying on Congress to make those common sense reforms.
Is there any frustration in the department? And I met Secretary Nunn. I've had her on the show a couple of times before she was secretary. Is there any frustration in the department that the Congress hasn't started codifying? Every single time the president signs an executive order, it's my feeling as a conservative American that loves the country that the Congress should the next day, offer up a bill. Is there any frustration there, or is the process working well?
I think first and foremost, we're focused on the budget and making sure that the accomplishments we've made, such as getting those border encounters down 95% and our arrest numbers being up increasingly. I mean, Joe, putting this in perspective as well, our ICE and Border Patrol agents have been completely hamstrung for the last 4 years. They haven't been allowed to do their job. They've been vilified. They've been disincentivized from doing their job. So the fact that we've had the success we have really speaks to our law enforcement. But there's a reason Secretary Noem you so frequently see her on the ground, on the border, on these ICE operations, because she wants to understand what resources do they need, and we need Congress to get those resources for them.
It's Tricia McLaughlin from the DHS. So I want to ask you about Delaney Hall. Delaney Hall, if I understand it right, is a privately owned place. It's a facility owned privately, leased by the DHS, leased by the government. And you got some really bad guys there. Can you tell who's there? I don't mean names, but how are they gang members? Are they rapists? Are they murderers? Who's there at Delaney Hall in New Jersey?
Joe, I'm so glad you asked this because this is what completely gets missed in this conversation. Who's at Delaney Hall Detention Facility as members of MS-13, known terrorists, child rapists, multiple pedophiles, really the worst of the worst. And the fact that the mayor of Newark, who of course is running for higher office, he's running for governor and he wants his 15 minutes of fame, he's calling for these people to be released, as are these members of Congress who went so far as to storm this detention facility. And what they say is in the name of oversight. And then they went even farther, which is to assault our law enforcement officers, which we will not have.
Let's clear some things up. Is there a CO? Did you guys get all the permitting that you need? Or is it a legal facility?
It absolutely is a legal facility. We have all the permitting we need. We've gone through all the safety inspections, fire inspections, electrical inspections. You name it. We're dotting our T's and crossing our I's.
Well, good. I'm glad, because the lies in the media are that, well, the mayor says that there's no CO and it hasn't been updated and it hasn't gone through an inspection, but all that stuff has been done.
Absolutely.
So the members of Congress show up, and you and I can agree that they do have oversight, but you can't just show up whenever you feel like it, knock on the door and say, let us in, we're going to do what we want to do. There's got to be some sort of a scheduling done. You've got to ask for, on Thursday at 4 o'clock, can we come by and inspect the facility? They have that right to oversee. They don't have the right to storm the facility, right?
Oh, exactly. Secretary Noem was in Congress for 8 years prior to this. She is very much wants oversight and sees the importance of it. But exactly to your point, for the safety of the facility, for the safety of our law enforcement and the detainees and our staff there has to be proper protocols and proper channels. You can't just storm a detention facility in the name of oversight and say that's not trespassing and breaking the law. It puts our law enforcement at risk, it puts those staff at risk, and it puts our detainees at risk as well, Joe.
As we started this interview, I was watching some live coverage from Capitol Hill. There are a bunch of Democrats standing out there around a microphone and a podium, and they're all complaining about how Trump is this and Trump is that and Kristi Noem is the other thing. And they're all complaining because Congressman LaMonica McIver, who on video, you see her giving the forearm shiver to a bunch of federal agents, is going to be charged. Announced yesterday by Alina Habba, the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, she's going to face charges for assaulting a federal agent. If I had done that, if you had done that, we'd already be behind bars. We'd already face charges. She got a couple of weeks, reprieve. What's the argument do you think they're making? Are they trying to make this about something bigger than what we all watched on video? We all watched her. She's wearing, for those of you watching right now, she's wearing the red outfit, and she's just forearming and hitting in the back of the head federal agents as she plows her way through. They're claiming that the federal agent started it, so she had the right to try to get herself out of that. What is your take on the Democrats rallying around somebody that we've all now seen on video committing assault?
I think that they don't have a message, Joe. Okay. And so now they're going so far as to defend members of MS-13, child rapists. I mean, we've seen it with these protests, but then they go farther and they're defending members of Congress who are assaulting our law enforcement agents. Joe, our law enforcement ICE agents are already facing a 400% increase in assaults against them. Wow. Like you said, if it's a typical U.S. civilian who was assaulting an ICE agent, like we saw her body slam, body ram, striking, pushing, shoving, whatever you want to call it, an ICE agent, we would be arrested. And lawmakers are not above the law.
It is. It's clear to anybody who watches that video, but they're trying to spin it that for some reason she was enticed to do that, and she had to do that for the safety of the mayor and the safety of her and other members of Congress. But again, just to go back to what we talked about a minute ago, members of Congress can't show up unannounced and just say we're coming in. You said it's for the safety of the inmates, the safety of the federal agents. I would add that it's for the safety of the members of Congress. You can't just show up at a federal detention facility and just say I'm here. So what is the pushback by the DHS? Do you just leave it alone now and let Alina Habba do what she's going to do, and they can complain all they want on Capitol Hill? Or is there any other action that Kristi Noem has to take?
Right now, it's in District of New Jersey's on their plate. Right. But I will say, Joe, that we take the law enforcement, like their safety, incredibly seriously. And I'm glad that they took action, because we can't have, especially as we go into the summer, and we know summer is ripe with protests, we cannot have people assaulting our law enforcement agents. It's un-American. It's definitely beneath any member of Congress.
It is Tricia McLaughlin. She's the DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs. We appreciate the time and the access. if I watch the media and take it seriously, and I don't, I'm a former TV news anchor. This is why I do what I do now, because I can actually tell the truth. They would have me believe that you guys are knocking on the doors in the middle of the night and arresting 2, 4, and 6-year-old cancer patients, and you're deporting them. The sob stories that we're seeing, it's effective, unfortunately, for some people who are in the middle leaning left. But you're not doing that, right? Anybody who's being deported who is a so-called American citizen is a child of somebody who's here illegally, and the parent is being deported, and they're taking the kid with them, right?
Joe, we are not separating families, and we are absolutely not deporting U.S. citizens by any means, especially U.S. citizen children.
Right.
These parents of the children are given the choice. They can leave the child with a safe relative, guardian, or the state, or they can take the child with them. Most of the time, the parent chooses to take the child with them, and we make sure that they're not in harm's way, that they're safe. But there's so much, Joe. Every single day, it's like whack-a-mole. We're spending debunking this fake news that's out there. I just dealt last week with a story from the New York Times where they did almost a whole Vogue cover on this guy who was in the U.S. for 30 years. Turns out he was in jail in New York for 15 of those years for kidnapping. The New York Times never mentioned that.
They forgot his prison record. Come on. So again, they're trying to play both sides, and I love how you are handling it, because they're saying you're separating families. This is horrible, and then you say, okay, we won't separate the families. They can take the kids with them. This is horrible. You're deporting U.S. citizens. So do you have to react to every little piece of garbage that they say? You're right. It's whack-a-mole. But I mean, you could spend all day doing that and never get anything done. And obviously, you guys are getting something done. Is there a concerted effort at the DHS to say that one's so dumb we're not even going to address it? This one we should probably clear up.
It's my philosophy that we want to give the American people the truth.
Yeah.
And if we see information out there that's just garbage, we're going to dispel it. We're going to debunk it. We see it every day, and we really are fighting the good fight. That's why we're out here, follow at DHS.gov, because we're constantly, fighting that fight online and trying to bring the American people the truth, because they deserve it. They haven't gotten it for 4 years.
I agree with you. It's Tricia McLaughlin. Last question, maybe 30 seconds on this. The self-deportation thing makes sense. You get $1,000. You use the CBP Home app. You can self-deport and then start the process to come back legally. Is it true that it costs $17,000 to deport somebody if they're not doing it this way? Are we saving that much money if they take this option?
Yeah, I would say that's a conservative estimate. I would say it's at least $17,000 to find, arrest, detain, and then eventually deport these individuals is definitely north of $17,000 versus it's about a 70% savings if these individuals decide to self-deport, because they do get that financial assistance, get that flight home, and then the $1,000 stipend to start their new life. But it's more cost effective for the U.S. taxpayer, but it's also safer for our law enforcement and for those migrants.
Are they doing it?
They are doing it. We're going to keep on seeing more of it, Joe.
Tricia McLaughlin, DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs. Thank you so much for the time today. Let's do it again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe. Let's do it soon.
All right. We're back after this. Stay right here.